This is a guest essay written by Michael Oren, a former Israeli ambassador to the United States.
Along with destroying Hamas and re-establishing our security, the great unspoken objective of Israel in Gaza is restoring our self-proclaimed role as the keeper of the 6 million's memory and the guarantor of never again. At stake is not only Israel's future, but, in a very real sense, our past. And yet, even as Israelis have frequently referenced it, the war has posed the ultimate challenge yet to our right to speak in the name of and have recourse to the Holocaust. When, in July 2018, the Israeli government held a reception for Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, I declined to attend. As Deputy Minister in the Prime Minister's office dealing with diplomacy, it was only fitting that I be among those receiving him, yet I would not. The reason had nothing to do with Orban's support for Israel, which was ironclad, or his willingness to oppose the European Union's ceaseless hounding of the Jewish state. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's campaign to whittle away the 28-nation consensus that the European Union needed to condemn us certainly made strategic sense. And while the Hungarian strongman's efforts to dismantle parts of his country's democracy discomforted me, far more draconian measures by Russian, Arab, and Chinese leaders had not moved me to boycott them. My problem, rather, lay with Orban's relationship to the Holocaust. He and his neo-fascist party had praised Hungarian collaborators with the Nazis and the danger that posed to Israel's security. Along with the IDF, the Mossad, and the Shin Bet, the Holocaust is an essential component in Israel's defense. Very few countries in history ever confronted genuine existential threats. Japan and Germany in World War II set out to defeat, not destroy, the United States. But Israel has faced several, simultaneously and daily, since its creation. Conversely, while the U.S. determined to defeat the Nazis and the Imperial Japanese, it did not seek to wipe Germany and Japan off the map, but to restore their peaceful place in world affairs. Egypt, Syria, and Jordan, by contrast, once strove to annihilate Israel entirely, and Iran and its proxies, Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis, still do today. And when Israel acts to protect itself from these existential threats, the Holocaust joins its F-35 jets and Merkava tanks as a major defensive asset. As a people which has suffered and survived an attempted genocide, we declare, Israel has the right to use extraordinary means to prevent its recurrence. By providing a moral tailwind, the Holocaust provides time and space for those jets and tanks to act. Preserving the memory of the Holocaust is, therefore, a strategic national interest for Israel, one that we would be tragically negligent to harm. Establishing warm relations with Orban's Hungary, or with Austria's ultra-rightist former Chancellor Sebastian Kurz, or with the Polish government that denied its country's complicity in the mass murder of Jews, may have short-term diplomatic benefits, but at an irretrievable strategic cost. By selling our Holocaust birthright expediently, we risk forfeiting our past and jeopardizing our future. We also chip away at the nation's roots. Israel's Declaration of Independence cited the Holocaust as a basic justification of the state, and Israel thereafter arrogated the role as the prime repository of the Holocaust's legacy. The declaration says, "The Nazi Holocaust, which engulfed millions of Jews in Europe, proved anew the urgency of the re-establishment of the Jewish state, which would solve the problem of Jewish homelessness by opening the gate to all Jews and lifting the Jewish people to equality in the family of nations." This claim enabled Israel in 1952 to accept hundreds of millions of dollars in German reparations to the Jewish people, and 9 years later, to try and execute Nazi mass murderer Adolf Eichmann. Yad Vashem, Israel's World Holocaust Remembrance Center, became first stop of every foreign dignitary's visit to Jerusalem. The message was clear. This is what can happen without an independent, defendable Jewish state. Israel's claim to exclusivity did not last long, though. By the 1970s, Holocaust memorials, many with a universalist message, were inaugurated in Washington, D.C. and other capitals, and Holocaust studies programs sprouted on American campuses. Hollywood seized on this interest by producing blockbuster movies and television series, so many, in fact, that conventional wisdom held that a Holocaust theme was a surefire path to an Oscar. As Israel's ambassador to the United States, the most important speech I gave annually was to the leaders of Congress and the administration assembled in the Capitol building for Holocaust Remembrance Day. But along with the rising challenges to Israel's claim to the Holocaust legacy, came assaults on the Holocaust itself, and not just from the David Irving-esque deniers. Scholars such as Yale University historian Timothy Cinder and journalist Isabel Wilkerson sought to contextualize the Holocaust by linking it to other Eastern European massacres or comparing it with other racially based injustices. Young American Jews, raised in a victimhood equals virtue environment, became increasingly reluctant to cite the Holocaust's uniqueness and to challenge the Palestinians' attempts to liken it to the 1948 Nakba, Arabic for catastrophe, and used to describe the Palestinian point of view of Israel's War of Independence, launched by 5 Arab armies against the new Jewish state, during which hundreds of thousands of Palestinians fled their homes. The Palestinians, meanwhile, keenly aware of its contributions to the creation and protection of Israel, assailed the Holocaust in multiple ways. Many echoed the long-standing Arab claim, first presented to U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt by King Ibn Saud in 1945, that Palestine was simply the place where Europe dumped those Jews it failed to kill in the camps. Current Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas went from downplaying the Holocaust, 1 million dead, not 6, in his Soviet University doctoral thesis of 1982, to last year both minimizing the Holocaust and insisting that the Jews brought it on themselves. When Hitler perpetrated the Holocaust, he had obvious reasons. They, the Jews, were plotting to take over Germany, Abbas's colleague Yasser Abisido said recently, echoing Abbas. For a great number of Palestinians, acknowledging the Holocaust was tantamount to recognizing Israel's legitimacy and negating the importance of the Nakba. Accordingly, in 2009, Palestinian Authority officials shut down a Palestinian youth orchestra after it performed for Holocaust survivors. In 2014, Al-Quds University in the West Bank forced the resignation of American Studies professor Mohammed Dajani after he led a delegation of Palestinians to Auschwitz. In general, the Palestinians and their supporters have focused less on denying or even justifying the Holocaust, and more on painting Israel as the new Nazi Germany and the Palestinians as the new Jews. The Palestinians, in the words of Edward Said, were the victims of the victims. Other Palestinians adopted the pledge, never again, and turned it against Israel. This desperate cry is pointed to the descendants of those Jewish victims of Nazi terror who now inflict on the indigenous people of Palestine a crime equally horrendous, proclaimed the introduction to the book The Plight of the Palestinians, published in 2010. It accused Israel of emulating the Nazis in perpetrating a prolonged, merciless attempt to erase a people from their land by whatever force is needed. The equation Israel equals Nazis and Palestinians equals Jews, which might be abhorrent to neo-Nazis, gained increasing traction among Israel's critics, among them a growing number of Jews. Princeton professor Richard Falk, musician Gilad Atzmon, and Holocaust survivor Hedy Epstein have all compared Zionism to Nazism. Jewish writers Primo Levi and Jean Ameri both expressed the fear that, by citing the Holocaust to justify its brutal military operations, Israel was in danger of resembling Nazi Germany, a fear that Israeli theologian Yeshayahu Leibowitz upgraded into a condemnation of Israel's Nazification. Political scientist Norman Finkelstein began his lifelong assault on Israel, protesting the 1982 siege of Beirut with a sign demanding, "Israeli Nazis, stop the Holocaust in Lebanon." Still, none of these developments had the least impact on Israel. From the Sabras who, in the 1950s, disdained those who went like sheep to the slaughter, and labeled those who survived sawbonim, Hebrew for soaps, Israelis came to embrace the legacy of the Holocaust. The alternative to fighting is Treblinka, and we have resolved that there would be no Treblinkas, said Israeli Prime Minister Menahem Begin, justifying Israel's invasion of Lebanon in 1982. For high schoolers, a pilgrimage to Auschwitz, draped in the Israeli flag, became a pre-army ritual, while the dwindling number and plight of survivors regularly made national news. Every government office, including my own in Washington, boasted the photo of the 3 Star of David emblazoned F-15's flyover of Auschwitz in 2003. Israel, quipped the New York Times columnist Thomas Friedman, was in danger of becoming, quote, Yad Vashem with an air force. We stand here as men who refute their Jewishness and the Holocaust being hijacked by an occupation which has led to conflict for so many innocent people, announced filmmaker Jonathan Glazer upon winning an Oscar this year for Zone of Interest, a biopic about Auschwitz commander Rudolf Höss. The import of the maker of a Holocaust movie stripping Israel of the power to wield the Holocaust in its defense was not lost on the 2024 Oscars audience, which avidly applauded Glazer's statement. Writing in The New Yorker, Masha Gessen put a finer point on Glazer's accusation, likening Gaza to the Warsaw Ghetto. The term ghetto would have given us the language to describe what is happening in Gaza now, she wrote. The ghetto is being liquidated. Like Glazer, a Jew, Gessen noted how the Nazis built the ghettos to protect non-Jews from Jewish diseases, much as Israel created the Gaza ghetto to protect Jews from Palestinian threats. Both claims, she concluded, propose that an occupying authority can isolate, immiserate, and, now mortally endanger, an entire population in the name of protecting its own. Gessen's comparison of Gaza with the Warsaw Ghetto was echoed by Colombian President Gustavo Petro, while Russian President Vladimir Putin equated Israel's offensive to the Nazi siege of Leningrad. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan recently railed, "In the past, they were massacring the Jewish people in the gas chambers. A similar mentality is being shown by Israel in Gaza today." Social media has been rife with posts drawing parallels between Israel and the Third Reich, and accusations that the Jews are emulating the Nazis in perpetrating genocide in Gaza. Yet these themes were hardly confined to the web. In a lengthy essay published in the prestigious London Review of Books, Indian writer Pankaj Mishra argued that the war in Gaza is, in fact, a struggle over the Holocaust. Its memory, though sullied by Israel, is upheld by the millions of pro-Palestinian protesters demonstrating, quote, against savagery. Their actions will eventually overcome Israeli propaganda, Mishra predicted, and, quote, go some way towards redeeming the memory of the Shoah, a Hebrew word for the Holocaust. Mishra's voice is hardly lone. Podcaster and wrestler Joe Rogan recently claimed that Israel's actions in Gaza amounted to Israel saying that genocide is okay as long as we're doing it. Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva said Israel's war in Gaza was unparalleled in history, except when Hitler decided to kill the Jews. Chris Williamson, of the British Labour Party, called Gaza a concentration camp and characterized Israel as worse than the Nazis. Call it Holocaust decoupling or Holocaust severance. But a global movement is now mounting to cut the ties between the Jewish state and the final solution, and deny the former the ability to adduce the latter in its defense. Europeans, in particular, are welcoming this trend as an opportunity to at last escape the Holocaust's burden, and even Germany is purportedly re-examining its initial support for Israel's policies in Gaza. The slogan, "Never Again," is being appropriated from Israel and, according to Pankaj Mishra, replaced by the universal, "Never Again for anyone." As soon as this war is concluded, once Israel succeeds in defeating Hamas and begins the process of demilitarizing, de-radicalizing, and reconstructing Gaza, we must embark on a quest to reclaim the Holocaust from those who seek to detach us from it and even use it against us. While parts of the world may now contest that ownership, we must nevertheless uphold and preserve it if for ourselves and generations of Israelis to come. We must think twice before squandering our legacy, selling our birthright, for potentially short-term benefits. Girded once more in our past, we can fight more effectively, more morally, for our future.